Please go ahead, Mr. Behari.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Good morning, commissioners. Yes, my name is Khemraj Behari, very often called Kemi. So I'm currently the head of risk and legal services at the City of Ekurhuleni. At the time when the incidents have happened, around 2023, I was just in the process of being appointed as the head of corporate legal services, as it then was. My functions before being the head of department, I used to be the divisional head, municipal courts, bylaw enforcement and compliance. So from there, the main function there was compliance. I established courts and so on throughout the Ekurhuleni region, but the compliance function was across 27 departments as it was then, which was then fizzled down to about 14 with the latest institutional review, and I did compliance across that. So throughout this process, Chair, my main focus has always been on the compliance function. I'm not involved in the HR space, save for special support that is required, either by the accounting officer or the head of that department. But I'll go through that in detail, and I'll welcome any further questions that are put to that. So when I was appointed then, from 2024, actually from February, I was then in terms of the council resolution, I was then offered an opportunity to be the head of risk and legal services, which we're in the process of still finalizing that stage, at this stage. But I perform the functions of both risk and legal services. Chair, in the main, as a Section 56 employee, of course, the city manager is my accounting officer. When I got appointed and I think most of the issues that arise fall around that period, between February, March, at that stage, from October 2022, I was acting in that capacity as the head, and then I was appointed in a letter dated 30th of May 2023, and in that process then assumed my functions on the 1st of June 2023 as the head of the department. So the entire issues that happened with the investigation into the Brigadier Mkhwanazi, I'm not sure, who later became the Deputy Chief of Police, it was during that period. And when I looked at the nature and scope of the statement that I received from the Commission, it focused basically on the following implicating witnesses. Of course, it's Chief of Police Mapiyeye, Deputy Chief of Police Rivo Spies, Mr. Kulani Niza, who was the divisional head, and Ms. Kelebohile Tepa. I think she was Colonel or Lieutenant Colonel, I'm not sure, from a civilian perspective in terms of exactly what. And then there was, in the letter from the Commission, there was a reference to a witness D. Of course, we heard what has happened then, since then. I've looked at all the record, the entire record, all the documents given to me. I could not find anywhere where witness D had referenced me. I then communicated with the Commission's attorneys, I think it was Mr. Pokpas, if I'm not mistaken, to say, but can you guide me in terms of where I have been referenced by witness D in the process? Because I have never had any dealings with the witness D throughout my life and throughout my career at the Ekurhuleni. More especially because it concerned me, because when I looked at the record, in the transcript of Ms. Kelebohile Tepa, there seems to have been a place where her evidence ended, and then immediately thereafter, the evidence of witness D commenced in the same record. So I sought clarity. I haven't got that clarity, but as I said, I've moved beyond that to say that I do not have any dealings. I've never had any dealings with the witness D. May his soul rest in peace. So that is where I focused in, Chair. The statement then is structured to assist the Commission after setting out necessary background. I think a lot of the evidence that I've went through in the records, I found that sometimes I needed to come, and that's why I appreciate your guidance, Chair, that I must speak, the main focus here, for me it was shocking, astonishing in all my career, to come and hear that you've received a 600,000 rand royalty money, bribe, however it's linked. I will deal with that issue because, Chair, that will take me back to where this matter comes through. And but that was for me. I don't know. I've been through, through a lot. But I'm saying I'm glad that the opportunity has come for this. So the allegations directed against me arise basically from the events that happened between 2023 and 2025. And during this period, Chair, remember the new council came into operation around late 2021, 2022. And it was highly political turbulence. In fact, as I started engaging with the matters and traced back, even in the September council meeting of this year, of 2025, more information was coming out about what happened during those periods. And I'll deal with that, Chair. So it is definitely necessary for me to then deal with this. It was an issue of financial strain in the budgets. And you may ask, how is it related to? It is about issues that have been picked up. Even the fact that we've had witnesses come to the Commission 2 years after these incidents to have happened, did not follow internal processes. And I think Chair, Commissioner Baloyi, you spoke about any processes available internally to address certain mechanisms, but we'll deal with that. But there are several mechanisms at local government level to address any allegations of impropriety, corruption, misconduct, even if the city manager, heads of departments who were not acting in accordance with that. Then I went back and I looked at introspection. What could I have done that has led to the three officers? I think Colonel Tepa, not too much, she mentioned about something about me not, processing her grievance, but I've got evidence for that, Chair, which I'll lead to that. But in the main, it was Chief Mapi, Deputy Chief Rivers Peace and Divisional Head, Neza. And I asked myself that, so had there not been a hero or a heroic figure like General Mkhwanazi, who in July went and released us, would that always have just been kept under the carpet? Was it not necessary to have dealt with the issue? Because as we are uncovering every day the news of CAT VIP and Vusimuzi, CAT Matlala, and Medicare 24, did they not consider it important at that stage? And I'll come to my, what did I consider at that stage? That you had waited now for almost 2 years. Even our president didn't know that this was going to be revealed. So without trying to find an excuse in terms of them coming, yes, they can come at any stage to raise the issue. But for me, it seemed like they were structured. It was structured and added to a stage where let's focus on the three characters. I don't want to talk too much about city manager. I'm sure I'll be dealing with that in cross-examination. But she's my accounting officer. She was my accounting officer. And the CEO of the company, I can't say that I totally ignore what the requests are, as long as those requests are lawful. And that is where the area I will get to. So
my apologies, Mr. Behari. As you're going through your statement, if you could just orientate us as to which paragraph you're dealing with so that we can also find you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. I think I've like...
on my count, you're on page 4 now.
I'm on page 4,
on page
exactly. Yes. And maybe taking some of the leeway from chairperson
no,
to say speak.
That's fine.
But I'm glad you brought it up. So on page 4, at paragraph 12, I'm coming down that way. So it was important then that, given my role in the city, that the main governing policy was directly taken from the Section 59 of the Municipal Systems Act, which is the system of delegations. That is the document that gives you your powers, what you should do, what you can do, what you cannot do. And I've attached as Annex KB2 to my document an extract of the system of delegations. Chair, if you would like me to go through in detail, or can we take it as being read because it's part of the annexes, but I can go through that in detail as well.
What's your preference?
I think, let me just go through it because, Chair, it's important given the evidence that has been laid already in terms of who had what delegations, when did they have those delegations. So let me go through that. Not too much in detail, but at least to give us the crux.
Yes, all right, thank you.
It would be the annexes bundle KB2, page 3. On page 3.
Okay. Chair, if we go to page, I think it starts off at page 4 of the annexes bundle. So there are delegations that are reserved for certain functionaries in the city. There's political delegations from the executive mayor, the speaker, and all other office bearers, political office bearers. And then the B delegated powers of all the administration come from that delegated to the city manager. So that city manager then delegates that functions to each individual head of department. And then the sub-delegations in that where the head of department is delegated to the divisional head or any other functionary in that department. So to deal with page 4, my specific delegations dealt with to institute and defend action in all courts of law, including quasi-judicial forums on behalf of council. The signing of all documents necessary, that's also been sub-delegated. Appoint attorneys and or counsel on the relevant experts when required. Lodge or oppose appeals. Consider settlements, that is on 6 now, Roman numeral 6. Ensure compliance with any bylaw of the council or right of council. Appoint legal representatives, including representatives not on the panel of attorneys. So there could be a prior deviation process where you could process. But we've stuck in the main not to invite trouble in breaching the MFMA, that we stuck to the panel members. Identify areas of non-compliance with applicable legislation in the municipality and also report thereon to the city manager and the risk committee. So, Chair, in the main, the function of compliance was what I've been involved in, apart from the litigation processes. But the compliance for me as a compliance officer of the city was a paramount function because in the city we have almost 400 pieces of legislation that we have to now. I'm a novice at dealing with all that 400 pieces of legislation, but at least we know where to find it, how you interact, and how you enroll. And we apply that then, Chair, as it comes to the necessary environment, whether it's energy, NERSA, water, ICT, hacking, all of those issues that come through. So, in addition to the express delegations on paragraph 13, Chair, of my statement, there's also included other forms of delegation where the city manager can give you certain delegations. But of course, those delegations cannot be outside the powers of that city manager. It must be falling within the realms of the system of delegations. And in terms of the Municipal Finance Management Act, on an annual basis, there are delegations from the city manager to the heads of departments, including the GCFO, heads of departments, and there are sub-delegations to the different other other employee levels. Now, why that is important, Chair, and why I'm mentioning that, is to focus on what Mr. Neza, throughout the conversation, we heard him refer to a delegation that was given to him by an acting city manager, Mr. Joe Mojapelo. It was just before, I think it was July 20, it'll be in his bundle.
2017.
2017.
A letter of, is it not June 2017?
It is during that period, but it was just prior the October 2017 system of delegations coming in. Yeah. And I think he's also referred to a case, is it a Mabusela case, but we'll come to that, Chair, at that time. So I'm focusing on this to say, can you delegate a function that you would not ordinarily have had in the greater scheme of things with a system of delegations? And if you had done that, if there's delegations from acting city manager Mojapelo were valid. Indeed, the moment the new system of delegations came in, applicable to the entire city, it says in the document that it revokes any previous delegations, whether it's an old system of delegations that would be in 2011, or whether it's specific delegations from a city manager or any other functionary. So you start off on a clean slate. In addition to that, Chair, it became apparent that various departments, including Human Resources Department and EMPD, had developed irregular processes. So when I started acting Chair from November 2022, I was faced with a barrage from attorneys. And I've always been sympathetic, being a former attorney myself, to the costs and the fees not being paid. I faced a barrage from attorneys who were appointed in HR matters. And I can refer to them as well. I mean, one includes Mr. Majang, who was mentioned in the papers. And they came to me, and there's a particular attorney, Mr. Mashuru Tenga from Madlopa Tenga, who came to me to say, but HOD, okay, what is happening that we're not being paid? I've not been paid for 7 years now. And I said to him, sir, I'm just acting now, I'm trying to clear that out. But why have you not raised this thing in 7 years? So he says to me, he was trying to keep the relationship. So I'm saying, are you saying now that you don't want any relationship with me, that I'm acting? But it was just to say that these are the concerns in terms of what I was finding when I got into the department on EMPD and HR processes not being followed through, and unpaid legal fees, adverse awards against the city, and the undermining of accountability processes. And that is why it's important that I speak about that delegation of City Manager Joe Mojapelo at that stage. So when that process happened, Chair, and if I want to cross-reference, if I may, to the document of Mr. Rivo's piece, where he attached, which is so-called minutes of a meeting that were held with the EMPD top brass and the city manager. With your leave, Chair, may I quickly? I stand corrected, but it is a document which was supposedly a meeting. So I don't know if it's either by Chief Mapiyeye or Mr. Spies, where there was a meeting held at the office of the city manager. I was absent from that meeting, in that meeting, and where several officers lodged complaints about what was happening. There's a particular reference to Mr. Okut Besadenhout, where he stated that 99% of labor matters that are being sent on arbitration are being lost. So it necessitated us going in and looking at what is the issue. I mean, we've had, and Mr. Ngeza, I don't want to say anything incorrectly, but he's an experienced HR practitioner. He was very experienced. He had many years there. But then what was there happening that every matter referred to, or almost 99%, was lost? That loss at the labor court, without doing our due diligence and proper preparation, has an impact on our cost implications. It has an impact on our budget. Because of the city, Chair, we have at this stage, as I'm speaking to you now, a contingent liability account of almost R1 billion. When I took office, it must be just more than R1 billion. And the emphasis had to be on doing proper investigations, getting proper evidence, looking at the prospects of success and what needed to be done to ensure that we do not have the situation, because in labor matters, it is highly intensive on procedure. And then the substantive aspects come in. So that has always been my interest. And I'm coming to the process, Chair, of what happened in this Mkhwanazi, General Mkhwanazi and Brigadier Mkhwanazi matter. Upon assuming office, I implemented, when I discovered these issues happening, Chair, the budget for legal services was at the City Corporate Legal Services Department. To go for another department official in another department to come and incur the cost on our budget, whereas that is there, it would have been non-compliant with the vote allocated in terms of the Municipal Finance Management Act. Even if you apply the Public Finance Management Act, those votes are very important. Who are the authorizing persons? How are they done? Who instructs attorneys? And I looked at, in the main, because of the complaints I received from Mr. Majang and Mr. Madlopa, amongst all the other attorneys, of the fees not being paid in 7 years. For me, I couldn't understand how, in an annual budget, where you have a budget allocated, that you could have overruns. And then I started finding out that, and this has happened recently as well. I've got some WhatsApp messages I'll share with the Commission as well. When attorneys in critical matters were not being paid, I was becoming a kind of a debt collector for the attorneys and advocates. I don't mind that, because in fact, the attorneys and advocates were doing very good work. If they were not doing good work, because we were involved in every matter now, then of course I would raise that. But when you hear the stories, I'm saying about quite experienced advocates, senior counsel. And then I started looking at what is happening with this issue of the legal costs. What are the irregularities that are happening? And then I uncovered that Mr. Ngeza has been using this delegation from Mr. Mojapelo to start using the threshold of 500,000 Rand that he could approve. And he was appointing the attorneys. Primarily, when I uncovered this, was about 5 attorneys. And these were Majang, Madlopa Tenga, Mr. Zebediela, Jack Zebediela, David Mokhaswa, and one other firm, which I can't remember, but I can't get that. And I'm saying, but these are attorneys, but you're appointing them and you're not paying them. But the obligations to answer to counsel would be on my obligation. It'll be hard to account for why the monies have not been there. And there seemed to be a progress in terms of the finance that every year, in the last 3 months of the financial year, they don't pay. They ask the parties to roll over the accounts into the new year. So these for me are irregularities. And I questioned the appointment with the former divisional head, Davy Frank, to say, but how is Mr. Mkhwanazi appointing attorneys in carrying the costs? And how do we control it? Because I'm answerable at the end of the day for that budget. I've also established then, Chair, that there were practices where in the appointment of attorneys, you have a Form K, which is part of the agreement, that attorneys, okay, with advocates, we're not so strict because we look at the Bar Council rules and so on. But with attorneys, that when they're appointed, they follow what you would call this, a tariff, especially catered for us to see how we can save costs. And even with that, attorneys making that sacrifice to go at a lower tariff, you still withhold the payments to them. So this is like a total value change here. If you express, and how we came to what we came to where I'm implicated now in these matters. Establish a fees vetting committee to say, but who looks at the vetting of attorneys' fees? We've uncovered almost 3 million rand we saved because we've now started putting a due diligence. Before that, legal advisors were just settling on accounts. Legal advisors were appointing attorneys, and in one incident, a legal advisor at the legal department had moved a matter from one attorney who's been dealing with the matter for a long time to another advocate who's related to one of the staff members, who charges 100,000 rand for a plea on a collision matter. And for me, that is where, I started looking at, but what has been happening? And when I started asking these questions, I get a pushback. But I've ventured on, I carried on with my team. I said, no, we'll do the vetting. We set up the fees vetting committee. We will continue to do that. But then the challenge came then with the finance approving that. So I'm not being popular at the city for many reasons, Chair. And that was because I was trying to get the legal framework in place. So in disciplinary matters, then I think that could be to avoid all the procedural defects and failed disciplinary inquiries. This is where the involvement from a compliance perspective, my involvement comes in. If you go to page 17, or paragraph 17, I've dealt with it became a very hostile environment here. In this period, the city also experienced serious instances of political interference. Chair, and I appreciate the fact that you said speak, because that is where it comes through. So because apart from what was happening at EMPD, there seemed to be a total collapse. There was a total distrust between certain categories of employees and other employees. And it dealt with promotions across the board, to the extent that even last year, I think it was widely reported that the EMPD had come to a shutdown, EMPD police officers. They blocked highways. And that hinged on only one decision, Chair. It was a decision of the CFO to cut down overtime without consultation. And that brought, I know there were officers who performed, they were, not the whole of EMPD is rotten. For me, the management needs to be addressed. But they're hardworking officers who put their lives at risk to go there. But to be excluded all of a sudden from, and this history of overtime in the city of Ekurhuleni, it's not become what you would expect of an overtime, where you say overtime is something over and above what you earn. It has become a trend over the last 15, 20 years, where that overtime is seen as being definite. And people budget on that. People live their lives on that. So when I looked at that issues and the costly, and I said but we need to start looking at the problems in EMPD and the issues that came about later on. I wasn't aware at the time when the matter came to me about the challenges, the full challenges at EMPD. That was only after the meeting with the city manager, and when city manager decided then to issue a directive or a letter. That letter, I think, is in the bundle as well from Mr. Ngeza of the 22nd of August, if I'm not mistaken, Chair, where it seems to be seen that we usurp the functions of Mr. Ngeza. So, in the political interference, which it is quite, how do I say, unabated. No apologies. Because the main thing when I looked at the file and how the file came to me, the file of the investigation onto the internal affairs of Colonel Erasmus, was when I think Colonel Erasmus, who was the collator of that docket, approached me towards the latter part of May 2023. He said, HOD, we're applying for an extension of the suspension. Mr. Mkhwanazi was suspended sometimes in February. We want to have an extension of the suspension. So I said to him, in terms of your HR guidelines, labor legislation guidelines, and I must say that I have a which I consider a good relationship with Mr. Henny Erasmus, even up to the 1st of December 2025. I said to him, Mr. Erasmus, or we call him Henny, why is the need for an extension? Because you finalized your docket, your investigations in March of 2023. By that time, Mr. Mkhwanazi would have been already on suspension for about a month. The collective bargaining speaks to the 3-month period. But it's 3 months from when the decision, I think it's clause 7 or paragraph 7, to proceed with disciplinary proceedings. Now that decision was taken by, it says, by the city manager or a duly authorized representative. So Mr. Ngeza, in my landscape using the system of delegations October 2017, that decision would have to be taken by the city manager or the head of department of HR.
Would that be the decision to extend the suspension?
Extend the suspension as well as proceed with disciplinary. So what Erasmus was looking for was for me to give some supportive comments and say, can we do that? And that's when I said to Mr. Erasmus at that stage, please, I'm inundated now. Please, can you leave the file with me? I will go through it and I'll place the time, because he said to me the suspension was coming to an end. So I met with Mr. Erasmus again after going through the file a day or two later. And if I may, I just want to skip a few, which we can come through. But in the crux in my meeting, if I may take just a slight step back, the period of high-profile investigations that we were dealing with at my level involved the EMPD Blue Lights matter. It wasn't an investigation that I was dealing with, but it came through as what the city was dealing with it. It involved CAT VIP and former acting Chief Brigadier Mkhwanazi. That's one of the issues I wanted to change in my supplementary. If I look at page 20.1, I actually said acting deputy chief of police. He wasn't the acting chief, he was acting deputy chief. That is page 6, paragraph 20.1, Chair. Then, unfortunately...
Sorry,
yes, Chair.
Mr. Behari, what are you changing in 20.1 on page 6?
So, where I said 20.1, I said involving VIP security and former acting chief Brigadier Mkhwanazi. It should be acting deputy chief.
Oh, okay.
And then these matters all fell within that period then. A sexual harassment complaint and related misconduct allegations against the Chief of Police was lodged. Subsequent to that complaint, we were accused by an attorney of the complainant to say, but this complaint has been lodged by then, and you are protecting the Chief of Police. I was not aware of any complaint prior to that letter from the attorney. I can't remember the attorney right now, but I do have his details in the office. Then the Sintel traffic fines irregularities implicating Deputy Chief Spies. And then the suspension and eventual dismissal of Divisional Head Employee Relations, Mr. Ngeza, on the grounds of misrepresentation of qualifications and contractual non-compliance. So these are essentially the witnesses who implicated me in terms of what I've done legally, procedurally, and accountability on behalf of the city. On page 20, the Commission will observe that none of these allegations raised against me, though, were given to show a direct link to any incidents of corruption, fraud, me. The way the matter was carried out and aired, and in fact, it was even done before I think they came to the Commission to say that there's two HODs received a massive increase of 600,000 without going into the, and looking at the document to say, where does this come from? So, Chair, I now deal with the specific allegations. This is the salary adjustment. But if the Chair would perhaps maybe out of more interest, maybe I should go to the investigation first of Mkhwanazi, or can I follow this trail of thought, Chair?
Is it not better? I think it makes it better for us to follow the narrative if you deal with them in the manner in which you've itemized them here.
Thank you, Chair.
Not so much itemized in the manner in which you've dealt with them here.
Thank you very much. So, Chair, when it comes to that, a central allegation advanced before this Commission, particularly by Mr. Ngeza, is that the adjustment of my remuneration in 2023 constituted a so-called loyalty bonus. And that loyalty bonus was linked to my so-called involvement in...
Which heading are we dealing with?
Number 24, Chair.
Page 7, Chair.
Page 7.
The top of page 7, paragraph 24.
Thank you.
And that was then linked to say that, no, Mr. Behari stopped the investigation or the disciplinary proceedings against Mkhwanazi and then received this loyalty bonus. The allegation for me, Chair, is unfounded. I never involved in any disciplinary processes at staff at a lower level. My engagements with Mr. Erasmus was to look at the compliance issues. What would be the prospects? What are the glaring issues you can see in the files as regards calling of the witnesses? I know my former colleague, Niza, said, but he acted as a shop steward. I mean, there's some way they say, you expect shop stewards to act like this. Chair, in our environment where you face litigation costs which are spiraling, and to understand, you have to play the other side and say, what could be this impact that could lead to a possible loss of the case for the city, and future risk that we could then be sued. So how do you mitigate against these issues? That is what my intention was. And in terms of guiding that. So when I was appointed as the head of department, Chair, paragraph 25, with effect from the 1st of June 2023, the all-inclusive remuneration package approved for the position was, I think it was 2,055,000. When I was a divisional head, immediately prior to that, because of the 8 years that I've been at the city, my salary had already come through an amount of about 2,088,000. So effectively, I know I should have been a better person perhaps at that stage and say, no, even with a new function, with the added responsibilities as the head of department, I must take a pay cut. But I'm saying that I asked the city manager to say, but how is it now that I've got to take a pay cut for running 4 divisions instead of 1? So I did not sign my contract because I was negotiating to say, but what can be done? I was just given an undertaking to say, no, there is a process for salary review that goes to organized structures within the city. The city manager had no power to increase my salary. She had no power. What she did was give me the undertaking to say, because I signed my contract of employment on the last day, the 30th of June, 2023. Having to consider and go through that, but what do I do? At the risk of not having, because my contract as divisional head would come to an end. I would have to consider family issues and all of those matters. And what do I do? So on the undertaking to say that, no, we'll submit a evaluation to the remuneration committee and let them decide. And I'll deal with the issues thereafter. I also picked on numerous other irregularities pertaining to heads of departments' appointments, including which has been raised by most of the metros that are now in Gauteng have been raising issues on irregularities in the appointment, because after the 1st of November 2022, when the Municipal Systems Act was amended, there were new provisions brought in, and all the heads of departments appointed after that needed to be complied with that. But the council and certain members or certain parties in council were constantly trying to defeat that. Why? For no other purpose than say, no, we want to control a head of department. I was not prepared to do that. And I'll talk to other incidents why. So the issues of permanence of heads of departments, the issues of members of the panel, these all arose. The issues of the MEC's functions arose. And what could the MEC do? And I had an appointment, even with the MEC. I must say I find him to be a very wonderful character. MEC Mamabolo. And we had our engagements. And I had to say, and it was treated on my side to say, oh, is he being rude now by raising issues, which I wanted to look at protecting the integrity of the city. So there was a process, Chair, which was recognized. I didn't want to bring in Mr. Ngeza, but Mr. Ngeza himself is aware of the review processes. He has applied for review through his head of department on the same way basis. The evidence is there, I have it. I don't want to put it out like what my salary stuff went on. And why I had an interest of that was not even for this party. It was because of the instructions that we developed that
Just a second, please, Mr. President. Please continue.
Yeah, and why I'm saying that is vital, it's not about me saying, oh, he said this and I must say this and try and expose him. No. It's about me having taken instructions based on his termination as an employee of the city, which went through several external factors.
Had Mr. Ngeza's positions also changed, or was he trying to have his remuneration reviewed whilst he was still in the same position?
Yes.
Or had he, like you,
Yeah.
had a change in position?
The one was he was appointed to a position, and then he wrote to his HOD, I think it was Ms. Naledi Modibedi at the time. She moved it to the city manager, Dr. Mashazi, and Dr. Mashazi approved it.
Okay, no, I just wanted to see if the two situations you are comparing were analogous.
Okay.
No, you may continue, thank you.
Yes. And that is where, Chair, I try to come to the point that Dr. Mashazi, apart from moving something on behalf of, because any issues that concern my contract, I needed to raise with her. She just moved it to the organized structures to Remuneration Committee. Remuneration Committee is, remember in the system of delegations, the 2017 October, the negotiation of salary increments and so on lies with the Executive Mayor under delegation. The Executive Mayor then, through the Mayoral Committee and the Remuneration Committee, deals with those issues. So we are not involved in that process. Even though I sit, HOD, HR and myself sit in a lot of in-committee meetings and so on, we're not involved because it involved us directly. Right. So HOD, HR could not even sit because she was also, so she was appointed in March 2023. I was appointed on the 1st of June 2023. So when the application was moved, then I think it was in July, it was after the ratios are raised to say, I'm concerned. I mean, how do I deal with the issue? And I was given the assurance that you'll move with an application. And then there was a full process through the Remuneration Committee, which when they've made a decision, they then move to the Mayoral Committee, and the Mayoral Committee approved those increases based on our submissions. And because the Mayoral Committee is a committee of council, they then do a noting to council. So any councillors that are not happy with that can then say to the Mayoral Committee, I want more details, I want this. Okay. So that is where, and that is why I was so concerned when it looked like as if, you know, we were just given the 600,000 in my pocket. But if you look at then the increase of 500,000, bringing it down amounts to about 24,000 a month, actual difference in my salary after taxes. That is for taking on three other divisions.
I was going to correct you until you said after deductions. If you had not said that, I would have said you are incorrect.
After the tax implications. So yes, Chair. So I've included my whole salary at KB3 of the annexures. That is very annexure KB3.
Which is page 6 of the annexure bundle.
So for full disclosure, because I mean the salary increases are. So if we look at that table, Chair, KB3, page 6. On the 1st of July 2022, the salary to the 31st of May 2023, when my position as divisional head ended, there's the salary that I've described. So I was earning 2,088,551 rands. On the 1st of June, there's a knock of about 30,000 rands, of 2,055,000. Of course, then later on in November, the normal increase came through, and then that brought the amounts. But Chair, I want to emphasize the fact that there was no loyalty bonus. There was no way the matter was portrayed in all before the commission and in all the media that we received something which would look at corruption. Chair, that is where, so if it's corruption, that means I or city manager would have had to influence the entire set of politicians, even up to council. Then the entire council will be part of the corruption. And this is why it is absurd of how this was done. But it was done for a particular purpose, Chair. It was done for a particular purpose to harm my fame, to harm my reputation, to harm HOD's reputation. And even when I go back to the political interventions or political interference, it'll show how, because between June and July of 2025, I'm just expanding on that, Chair, of 2025, I was brought under enormous pressure by the current city manager, Mr. Kagiso Lerutla, who was a CFO at the time, to settle. Kagiso Lerutla and Dr. Kupedi were vying for the city manager positions. And I was asked, because of certain agreements that were reached at the regional conference of the ANC, the African National Congress, that the agreements reached that you must settle NISA and you must settle Chief of Police. So at that stage, I resisted, because if you're settling on Niza, what are you settling on? Because the allegations is that first he was dismissed after not having met the basic suspensive conditions of his letter of appointment. He is a divisional head, employee relations. He ensures that contracts of all the divisional heads and HODs and so on are in place. Yet he did not have a signed contract months, if not years, after his appointment. That would again bring us to the Auditor General to look at, is this irregular expenditure, unauthorized or fruitless and wasteful? We have to look at what category it would fall under, because you don't have an underlying approval. So those are my concerns, Chair. With respect to Mr. Chief of Police Mapiyeye, my question was, how must I motivate to settle? You are talking as a city on gender-based violence, 16 days of activism. It is something that we are just, when the time comes to get popularity, we're talking about. Because as Commissioner Baloy has pointed out, I'm still a board member, Commissioner. I'm deciding now, my term is coming to an end. And then we give the new blood chance to come in. But for the Institute for African Women in Law, I belong to a group called FemNet International. I'm also involved in the South African chapter of International Association of Women Judges as the Secretary of the Trust for Training. Now, given all of these issues, where would I put my conscience when there's serious allegations being made to say, no, okay, fine, you want, let's settle the matter? Because already Chief Mapiyeye had an internal, they had a report, a forensic report done by a firm of attorneys, which was very scathing. It's available to the extent that commissioners need it. Already there was a protection order which was made final in the magistrate's court. And Chief of Police didn't even bother to go and oppose that in the light of serious allegations. And then we have the process of the disciplinary internally, where political interference came in from the beginning, Chair. It came in the way in which it was presented. Now, when it's an item against a senior manager, it is an item for the city manager, the accounting officer. But out of courtesy, city manager pushed it through to, to the mayoral committee. But when it came to the mayoral committee, despite assurances, say, no, we involved in protecting women, protecting our staff, there was that resistance. Every time the matter was to be served, we found that the mayor was not present. He would give somebody else to be. Then that person would say, no, as acting mayor, I think I want to wait for the mayor to come. So time was going. We were already accused of delaying the process by the attorney. So these are some of the issues that, and then the people who really came in there with the executive mayor, Mtagaza, was Alderman Tanya Campbell. Now, I have full respect for all the political parties that are in the city. The DA, I get on well with the DA elements. I get on well with Action SA, ANC, EFF, even the minority parties. But there are a few elements that have been pushing this for a particular agenda. And that has caused huge strain in the city. That has been now extended to interference in committees, the Oversight Committee for the Mayor and Legislature, the Oversight Committee for Corporate and Shared Services. These are, out of desperation, I rose to those committees to say, but this interference is unbearable now. Because, and those are some of the things I just want to try and come back. I know I can, when you deal with this issue, then you look at what happened, Chair. And please, my apologies but bring me back, Chair. So to emphasize the fact that the salary increment for me was no way about any corruption, no way in stopping any investigation or any disciplinary process. It was not my environment to do that, Chair. So when come back now, I know there's a lot of interest in Erasmus, and I said to Erasmus, are you finished with your investigations? You want an extension. How long do you want the extension for? Because, Chair, in any process in the labor environment and a lot of courts, if you're out of time for any particular reason, you can still have the condemnation leg that you can merit why you can make application for condemnation. What? Because these were serious. I mean, they were very serious charges. But I'm saying that in Erasmus, when I started looking at the trail of the witnesses, when I started looking at every document, what was for me very glaring, and I don't know why other people have not been picking up that on this, is the involvement of CAT VIP services, Anubis, I think it's Anubis, and Medicare 24 from 2019, Chair. 2019, there was a letter that Brigadier Mkhwanazi sent to the Chief of Police. I didn't see the date on that letter. But from 2019, they've been involved apparently from COVID. Then it came very important, and that is where my real focus was. The State of the City address, 30th of March, 2022. What happened at the State of the City? And I asked this of Henny Erasmus. I said, Henny, but who was there responsible? Now we had evidence about the MOU, and I'll deal with the MOU. Chair. Then there was also evidence about the operational plan that was forged. And I will come to that, because at that stage, Chair, when you're dealing with the chief investigator or the compiler of that, you have to look at then what Rivers Peace raised on the forgeries, on what he detected. I agree totally with that. If you look at the documents, you look at the font, you're looking at that. But it's like somebody been looking specifically for where you can find that. Because for me, and the common eyes looks at the signatures there, the 4 authorized signatures, and it behoves then for them to be put to their version. Are these your signatures? And then so that you could also go and get a proper expert to say that are these signatures, who are they, and so on. This matter with Brigadier Mkhwanazi then, where my concern arose, and that also goes through when we come and deal with the IPID issue. Because if you look at the IPID report as well, there's a lot of overlapping in terms of the witnesses. And when I spoke to Henny, the witnesses were in the main Christine.
Mr. Behari, as much as I gave you leeway to tell your story as freely and as comprehensively as you want to, but we also do want to have progress. We are around page 8 now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we're on page 8.
And it's been quite a while. To get to page 44, at this rate, it looks like it will take us forever. You will be on a topic and then you move on to another one. I think you are done with the one you were dealing with. And then you say, let me go back to Erasmus, when I thought you were already done with Erasmus.
Okay. No.
Perhaps we would have been moving much, much faster if you were reading your statement and perhaps supplementing here and there. I'm just trying, a balancing act of sorts, so that there's movement, real movement.
Point is taken, Chair.
Yes,
Let me strive to do that.
Yes, please.
It's just that on some certain critical issues, I may have to have that, please, leeway.
Yeah, that's why I said, perhaps if you read your statement and if you want to supplement here and there, you may do so, yeah.
I note that, Chair.
Thank you.
So let's go. I think I've dealt with the system of delegations then. Because those are the essential issues. The system of delegations, the remuneration committee, and the commission or the delegations of October 20th. So let's move to that. If I can then guide to page 9, let me see if I can go through that. I've dealt with it. It also talks to the system of delegations, Chair. The only important part here on page 10 is the fact that when Mr. Mkhwanazi relied on the delegations of Dr. Mojapelo, By that stage, the system of delegations for the city, in terms of Section 59, overrode all of the previous delegations. And then there's also the financial delegations, because the way it's structured, financial delegations come in annually, and you revise it annually, and the HOD in that department must grant that. So, Chair, then to come in then on page 41, page 11, paragraph 41, I just want to touch briefly on that letter but I think why I'm concerned about that letter, Chair, I've looked at the record, and I think the Chair also went to try and understand the process of why I would be brought into a process. Chair, for me, it emanates from the findings or the discussions of EMPD. And one of the main complaints from the EMPD police officers in that meeting were about a very disproportionate process of disciplinary proceedings. And they mentioned Mr. Niza. And I think we also spoke about Mkhwanazi. He was labeled as Mkhwanazi. And for me, from my colloquial learnings in KZN, is Ukosha. I'm chasing you, And another thing, it is imperative upon any employee, irrespective of where you are, to be labeled as a person who chases. That means you don't follow protocol. You don't follow processes. So that is where it comes very important to say that city manager, between HOD, HR, and city manager, they looked at those. I was not part of the meeting, but he brought me in to say, but how do we improve this? So if you look at the document there, previously to the 22nd of, it had 3 categories. It had a category for a further investigation. It had a category for internal hearing, and then it had a category for the disciplinary tribunal. So my engagements, Chair, and to try and understand, I think one of the questions you posed then on this issue, I'm dealing with then page 11, Chair. One of the questions you posed, but how did he manage with all of these issues, because you have over 1,000 matters? And Chair, it was not easy for me. But the accounting officer is looking at the institution being saved from labor disputes, being saved from the possible further occurrence of what happened last year. And these things are boiling, sir. It was boiling at the EMPD. And when I applied, so it was an extra leg where I don't want to say I don't sleep, but I worked till even midnight. I'm up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock sending emails. That is my pattern, my work pattern that I've been having. To ensure that when you do this, when you do the decision, take a decision to suspend and to, from a compliance perspective and to disciplinary, the witnesses who are there are available. Because a lot of the cases that we've been losing, at the last minute, the witnesses are either giving evidence for the other side, or they're not even coming to those forums, wherever it is. So, Chair, I have been doing that even until the internal suspension on the 2nd of December. I was, on the last day, I was still doing these matters that were allocated to me. It was not a matter of taking any function away from anybody. The HOD of the department would go, will do his prima facie. I think there was discussions around the prima facie determination. That was the HOD. If the allegations come against him, it then came to me to say, can you support this? What do I need for further investigation? And that is where my role would have come in even before. The way I applied myself in that Mkhwanazi matter came through here. So my role, Chair, on page 11 at the bottom, to review investigative files for legal sufficiency, to advise where additional evidence or clarification is required. And that is what my entire role was in the matter of Mr. Henny Rasmus. And again, it was purely focused on the risks to the city. What would be the risk of merely going on and not taking the safeguards? And I know I was alleged to have been a super HOD. There was never anywhere a super HOD, Chair. It was about me applying my compliance eye and the risk issues to try and say that, but where do we mitigate against the city? City has no money, Chair. I've got a WhatsApp message to say that we have no funds. I'll try and pay the advocates next week. How do you do that? You have a budget allocated. How can you say you don't have funds? So this is where, and at all the committees that I've been attending to over the last year or two, every time they've been saying, but what are we doing to mitigate the legal costs? And we've put in measures to mitigate the legal costs. And these are some of the measures to say, let us ensure that as we go forward, we have everything in a row so that we know that if we lose, it's based on what we could not produce and how we dealt with our case in the court, not where things we could have addressed internally. Then let's go to 13, Chair, if I may. Response to allegations, alleged interference in the disciplinary process of Brigadier Mkhwanazi. Chair, I spoke about being pressured on the settlements of the Chief of Police. When the matter came to me, I said it was towards the end of May for the extension of suspension. Chief of Police came and saw me on the 21st of June 2022, and he then sends me a letter dated the 21st of June 2022, but served on my office and my PA on the 22nd of June. I was unfortunately not at work from that date. I only came back to the office the following Tuesday because of court matters and so on.
Mr. Behari,
Yes.
Your statement at paragraph 53 says the 21st of June 2023, and I think you've just said 2022, if I heard you properly.
Yeah, it was,
Is that it?
Chair, yes, sorry, it's the 21st of June 2023, Chair.
Okay.
It was that letter. I think it was preceded by a letter or maybe at the same time to Brigadier Mkhwanazi to say I'm withdrawing the investigation. That was also on the same day, 21st of June 2023. And then there's a letter dated 21 June 2023 addressed to me. Thank you for that, Commissioner. It is further alleged that I pressured the Chief of Police to hand over the investigation document. Chair, the document was with me when Mr. Erasmus brought that to discuss initially. He took it back, and then Chief of Police came back with the document. So it's not as if I applied my mind only on the 21st when I had a meeting with the Chief. And there was never a time where I said that the case must be terminated and because of alleged lack of merit. This is purely incorrect, Chair. Now, I just want to touch, with your indulgence, Chair. I give advice in the following ways in the city. An HOD would call me. An HOD would approach me, even in other meetings. An HOD would come to my office and they would ask me, and I said, all I did was guide the HOD. I'll guide the HOD to say, can you look at this? I've looked at the stuff, let's look at that, add this, and so on. If there's a formal request for an opinion, I decide now, do we do it internally, because then I refer it to the divisional heads, or do I go externally and appoint counsel or attorneys for that? So this is one of the matters where Erasmus came to me. I looked at documents. Chief of Police came to me on the 21st. I looked and I guided Chief. But in the way I guided Chief, I do not know whether he understood that perhaps it's going to implicate him in the way I was asking the questions. And then decides, we're not going to take it further. Because that last engagement I had was on the 22nd or the 21st with Chief, and thereafter the letter came in. And I had nothing further about that until 2 years later, when this issue came up before General Mkhwanazi.
Just clarification. You say you don't know whether the chief realized when he came to you that it was going to implicate him. Well, can you just expand on that?
Yes, thank you.
How is he implicated? Because it's not clear from a statement what you're talking about.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. So, Commissioner, when I discussed the matter with both Henny Erasmus and the Chief, and I looked at the Chief and I said to him, Chief, the issue with Brigadier Mkhwanazi seems to stem from a relationship developed at the State of the City address, or even before. At the State of the City address, in the documents that you provided, there was an operational plan, Chief. Your signature is there. But, you know, Chief, in his way, he listened to me. He listened. But he would not say one way or the other, to say, I'm responding this way. So I said to him, Chief, firstly, the State of the City address involved, from what I understood in his own report, he found that there were people who were not supposed to be there, who were from companies who were not on our approved, appointed list of security companies. He found dangerous situations there because there were snipers in that environment. Who then would have briefed the Mayor, Tanya Campbell, who was our first citizen? We had members of the public on the day being there, because the SOCA is one of the most important events in a city.
Can I just interrupt you? My question was just to understand, implicate him in what way, before you moved on too much.
Implicating him to the extent that he has not applied the due diligence that he ought to have done to protect the citizens, to protect the first citizens, and in terms of that. Because that is where the implication is.
Thank you.
And then furthermore, Chair, the engagements with Chief and Erasmus were about, let's look at your witnesses that you have. The one witness being Christine, who talks about I think he referred to him to the blue lights. So Chair, I'm still now dealing with the allegations from page 13 onwards. Dealing with the allegations of Christine and the blue lights, and also the transfer of those vehicles, the donations. Chair, that donations was totally contrary, non-compliant with our system of delegations. I think that has been canvassed here, and I will support that. But what was critical in terms of what, and I asked Chief, but Stein says that were you in EMPD and the Fleet Department, which was a leg of transport, were you bypassing this matter all the time? Because Stein refers to other such instances when there was, even from provincial government, when there were donations done by way of a letter. And Stein, who was a proxy in the matter, deals with all issues, clearly stated that Mkhwanazi came to him, he had the vehicles to donate. And then I said to Chief, but that is why it's going to go back to where? Who was involved? When did Mkhwanazi meet with CAT VIP services, and what were the engagements? And what were the involvement of the senior leadership in the EMPD? So apart from implicating the Chief, it would implicate the divisional heads, or the deputy chiefs of police in critical matters pertaining to the state of the city. What was the knowledge? What did you brief the mayor about? It cannot be that Brigadier Mkhwanazi would brief the mayor on critical issues. Why would he be doing that? Why would you have allowed that to have taken place? What is the issue of the driving? Who was driving the vehicles on that day? So all of these issues, as it became it seemed to be me probing, but it was about, Chief, do you understand that it'll come back to you in terms of what you knew? How do you understand what you should have done, what you ought to have done? The witnesses were basically Stein, and it was Gwabe. Gwabe was a divisional head who received apparently a donation of 300,000 for books. And then I said to the Chief, but if you look at Gwabe's report, and if you look at Stein's report, they speak about the resources that were required. Even if you correlate that back to what Okhud Besaidenote mentioned, for essential police officers, for the vehicles, patrol vehicles, there were none. The bullets, there were none. Bulletproof vests, there were, well, I can't say none, but I mean, it was depleted resources. The college from Gwabe, there was the college, and what would the impact be if you could not get the 300,000 to pay? Chair, again, the process is totally incorrect. But the fact is, Chief, did you know about this lack of resources? And did you deal with finance? Because when did you approach finance for these resources? Because patrol vehicles are very important in protecting 4 million residents, not to even speak about the other residents or people that transit the area. But these are some of the discussions we've had here. So both Chief of Police and Mr. Erasmus could not give me the issues, because if I looked at it and applied my mind, I'm saying that if Gwabe is called as a witness and he says this, it means he was the one who did not follow. He ought to have said to Brigadier Mkhwanazi, but why are you bringing this? This is wrong. Go back to the Chief of Police, do a proper process, send it to legal for vetting, and let it go to the city manager. Same with the vehicles. Even the MMC, Masuku, came about and she raised concerns to say, but why, how can we not have vehicles? The police officers are going to the patrol sites with the private vehicles. What if there's a shooting? What if there's this? So these issues were raised by the MMC even prior to that. So those are some of the issues I captured. And then Stein's one for me was very glaring in terms of, Stein also said a separate statement where he says that there was no blue lights. There was no blue lights fitted on the vehicles. Now, I do know that the vehicles were transferred to the City of Ekurhuleni. I think it was for a day or two until Brigadier Spies raised certain concerns and overturned that. But there was a transfer for a minimal period. So the cost there, which I later saw, was about 200 Rand per vehicle to transfer the vehicles. But the entire process, if you go into the process of that, Chair, it's more than that. Transferring the vehicles is one thing, and showing the documents. You're not even showing for vehicles that are older than 3 years. Where's a certificate of acceptability or certificate of compliance? You know, your roadworthy certificates. Where are these documents? Because if you go into an open environment, Chair, and where there's a shop steward or attendants on the other sides, these will be issues that I think. So are we not putting ourselves at risk in terms of we're going ahead with it? We're not investigating the other role players. Even the chief, your statement about what you knew of that. I saw a letter where you say, I think it was, Chair, and I'll be corrected. There was a letter dated the 31st of March 2023, 2022. That was after the State of the City. Sorry, State of the City was 22. The next day, after the chief observed all of these issues, he wrote a letter, I think, to Mzolo. Mzolo was the direct in charge of Brigadier Mkhwanazi. And I could not see anything to say, but Mzolo, I want a full meeting. I want to know what is happening here, because the State of City address, you can't ask somebody for a written response. There should have been an engagement and you know, to say, bring all the parties together. I want to know, because what would have happened had one of those snipers killed one of the people attending there? And we know now from the evidence here, Ekurhuleni is becoming a place of peace, but unfortunately, what is happening in Ekurhuleni is not. So these are some of my concerns that I've raised here, because then I will have a separate claim to deal with if somebody was killed, even if the executive mayor was killed. So, and my concern was, but did you only rely on a operational plan, which has now been stated to be said it was forged, but when the other engagements from at least 2 weeks, a month before, 2 weeks before, a week before, and daily before the SOCA, that I would think is when you're applying your full powers. So hence, Commissioner Baloyi, sorry, in that long-winded thing, but to show that it was not a matter of just saying, Brigadier did this, he donated vehicles, he brought donations in, he put it blue lights. This was, for me, look at the full landscape of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with serious implications from CAT VIP services, from Medicare 24, and how they even got, even COVID-19. If they were involved in COVID-19, there was a program run by HR. Because in terms of the staff letters that go off, those were all dealt with between HR and the department involved. So, Chair, I just want to move on then for the purpose of, but I think we've got the crux of what I'm trying to achieve. Gwabe as well didn't take the responsibility he should have on page 14, paragraph 58, Chair. He ought to have sent it back to Brigadier and said, no, follow the process. But apparently those cadets would not have qualified. It would have caused a different problem if that happened. So, Chair, on page 15, page 68, with that, I totally reject the fact that I pressured him to hand over the docket and stopped all processes. The next time the docket was referred to was when there was a BX mail, a Bixi email, and then the forensic investigators got involved. I raised that because I am the Deputy Information Officer in terms of POPIA. And if there was credibility, bring forward, even if it's to council, send it through. But when you start to do that, and if later on, if time permits, or as I'm permitted, Chair, we can go into the details of the BX email. But what I did was raise my concerns as a Deputy Information Officer to the Office of City Manager. She called in the Chief Audit Executive at that stage, and then they proceeded further with the appointment of that. But, Chair, I don't get offended if a department head doesn't take my opinion. Because they do that with a full understanding that I will not be called in to defend the position later on. It happened in quite a few matters. Even external senior counsel give an opinion. That opinion is rejected. We spend money on the external legal counsel. And one of the such matters is that, which came to a header, I think, in the report of Dr. Julius Mkhwanazi. My apologies, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. I note that it's 11 o'clock. Might we take the tea adjournment?
Please hold your thought, Mr. Behari. Let's resume at 11:15. Let's adjourn.
Okay.